South Africa, but most of the world this has not worked. What happens then is you can create labor-intensive industries, which are like, I would say, industries, like investing in a new kind of technology-intensive agriculture, which becomes very productive, and that employs some people in the region, but then destroys all the subsistence agriculture and the agriculture that existed there before. The two things three things that you mentioned, which are absolutely fundamental. The role of the university. Well, most important thing besides being good, okay, so the first thing is that in order to be useful, you have to be able to offer something. So it should not be any compromise with the level of excellence of research, etc., etc. The other thing is that probably the resources of the university should be geared as much as possible to the needs of the country. And this is not something that the universities can do by themselves. This had to be incentives from the government and from the private sector. Incentives. So you can still do sophisticated analysis of the Hellenic culture, and that's the role of the university. But then, okay, you will be happy but poor. Or you try to really connect medical research to a new type of applications that you can both serve the needs of the poor population and stimulate business of a different type of vaccines, etc. And then you will get a joint government, private sector financing of your research. So this is the now. I don't think this is such a dream. I think it's there are a number of examples in the world besides the usual suspects in East Asia. The Chilean universities are now very much engaged in this kind of programs, but it's difficult. I'm personally now involved in Europe in a new venture which is called the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, the EIT. I'm in the governing board of that, and this is to connect in leading fields of research related to major problems of humankind, such as climate change or sustainable energy, to bring together the best companies and the best universities in Europe working on specific projects, and with some financing from the private sector, some from the European Commission, and we are moving fast, and it's possible to do it, but it requires a program. So the university business connection, sponsored and supported by the government, is a critical thing. One of the keys of the Finnish model is exactly that. The example of Finland is how the government brought together universities and business in developing a specific program that were both useful and could create good business, small and large business, and make Finland the most competitive economy in Europe. And that was not the case 15 years ago. The criminal economy. Job creation is a fundamental alternative, because, but it's not enough. It's not enough because the opportunities to increase your income in the criminal economy are much higher. The real criminal economy, not the petty thieves, which are another part of the survival activities. The real criminal economy. This is the global criminal economy at this point, according to the IMF, represents 5% of global GDP. Only counting money laundering, which is when you see for your sense of proportion, this is more than the global automobile and electronic industries together. Okay? That's what we are talking about, a monster, really. And when you try to fight it, look at Mexico. For the first time, they tried to fight it. And they're in a civil war. They are in a civil war. The key about to try to confront the global criminal economy requires to reform the police forces entirely. I'm not saying anything about South Africa because I ignore the situation. But in general, you cannot fight the criminal economy without fighting the criminals within the police. And these are not bad guys. Are guys who, if they want to do their job, they are going not just to be killed. That's okay, and that's part of the job. But their little girl is going to be killed. So it's choosing between, I know people in Latin America, good cops in that situation. I know them personally. Either this pile of money or the dead body of your little girl. So my friends decide not to be policemen anymore. Okay? Because at least, well, but that's a process of natural selection. So the people who stay are only those heroic guys who end up in bad shape always, and they're killing them by thousands in Mexico. Or people who have a more pragmatic view of life. So this is absolutely critical, because who says policemen says custom agents. Mexico yesterday dismissed 1,000 custom agents yesterday. Custom agents, judges, politicians, parliamentarians, ministers, army. 3 times Mexico has found that the general of the army in charge of fighting drug traffic was on the payroll of the drug traffickers. 3 times. Okay? So this is a very, 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 very serious problem, which most development economists, most development social scientists say, as one famous social scientist whose name I will not mention told me in one of the seminars in Latin America, Manuel, you are absolutely right, but since we don't have hard data, we should ignore it. Which is a certain attitude of a certain type of social science. And the last thing, metro government is fundamental, but what you mentioned in terms of if you do not organize consensus on some of the key issues of the country, if political parties keep fighting each other on the fundamental issues, then while we fight each other, we all collapse together. So that's a collective suicide in some extent. Why politicians keep doing that? Come to the presentation of my book on communication and power next week at the Center for the Book. My last book is exactly on politics and communication and why we are in a deep, deep, deep political crisis everywhere in the world. And there you'll have all the answers.
When he has this incredibly interesting analysis about the current global cities which attract people but are hollowed out. So unlike the 19th century cities, they're population magnets without being production centers. And some of your remarks connect to that, but you sound much more optimistic to me than Mike Davis. I'd like to hear you sharpen that.
What do you think the prospects are for creating that culture of tolerance that you speak about when the trend in many parts of the world seems to be in the opposite direction?
In terms of all the failed attempts in the rural areas, in terms of if there is successful agriculture, you said it would decrease jobs. Is there not a new model we can work on? Related also to all our natural systems being in decline, that we need a different model of agriculture.
And there are two measures that people are using with some success. One is the labor market, the area in which people actually move between residence and work and are able to move the residents to go closer to work or move the work to a closer residence, but it's a unified, relatively unified labor market. It doesn't mean that everybody works nearby, but that overall a substantial proportion of the population uses that entire area to work there. And they transform proximity in terms of transportation time. And then how much transportation time you are ready to take. If you are in Mexico City, you take 3 hours per day. In Catalonia, it would take 1.5. and so on. So that's, let's say, it, functionally speaking, is the labor market. Also can be the unit in terms of the production complex, which are the ancillary services and ancillary industries and activities that feed others. So it's kind of an export-import model in which whatever is the unit is organized in that area is the node of production. This has been historically important. Now the problem is that the actual spatial organization of your production system, it depends very much on the global connections. Depends on the chain of interconnection between the different components of a car or the different components of a computer, of the different programs that go into a service. If your software development is being done in India and you are in Munich, that is your production, the spatial dimension of your production system. So that is less and less used. And the other thing is, which is increasingly used, is the people who know best the actual changes in the economy and the urban economy, the metropolitan economy, are the people who do marketing. Because they have to define to whom they sell. And there is an operational definition. It's a media market. A media market. The unit in which all the countries are divided in media markets that the advertising industry knows. So there's one price for the Cape Town market, one price for the Eastern Cape market, one price for the Joburg market, and they actually have a boundary, which is very important to keep, which is based on who watches what within that market in terms of television. And it's very important because the tariff changes, and that's huge implications. So the people who watch television together live in the same metropolitan region, okay? That's the current definition. Is the most useful indicator that I have found lately. Mike Davis, good guy, and he's an excellent critic of Los Angeles, which he's horrified by Los Angeles. I am fascinated by Los Angeles. So that we start there. But I'm not. When I present my analysis, I'm analytical. I'm not optimistic or pessimistic, frankly. I try to see, and my books are not optimistic or pessimistic. It can be read. My books can be read in both ways because it depends what you project. When I say that the global criminal economy is 5% of global GDP, it's not very optimistic. And when I say that the police is the one who runs that criminal economy, it's even less optimistic. But then what? We have for me, the most important thing is to have as much as possible a correct analysis. And in that sense, and then stop there. Not stop as a person or a citizen, but stop there in my role as an analyst and let people decide their own fights. And that's a very substantial difference with Mike Davis, which is not good or bad, his part or my part. We're different. He is a polemist. He has a mission, has to convince people of all these things. And I think it's admirable. And he has suffered a lot because of this in his career. He's a remarkable urban analyst and has been, particularly Los Angeles, completely ostracized at one point. He had to leave Los Angeles to go, not in New York, which is not so bad, but upstate New York. because what he said about Los Angeles, and then everybody is in the elite of Los Angeles started to hate him. So I have great respect for him. But we're in a different business. I'm in the business of understanding first and letting people decide. He's in the business of understanding and immediately acting upon it and telling people what to do. It's very respectable, but it's different. Immigration and social tolerance, which are the prospects? Where are you? Oh, yeah, there. Which are the prospects? My view, there I can say I'm pessimistic, but that's, or optimistic, depends how you want to